commander on Crew Dragon is a little bit, I think, new for us here at NASA. And what I mean by that, we've been relying on the Russian Soyuz to get to the space station for a long time now, and that always has a Russian cosmonaut as the commander on it. And you may have one of the the U.S. Person that's on the vehicle may be the commander of the space station, but we in general have never had to, for quite a while now, worry about the commander of the vehicle that's taking you there. And so that's what's making it a little bit interesting in the sense of I am the commander of the Crew 1 Dragon vehicle, but once I cross that hatch and I cross into the International Space Station, yes, I stay commander of that vehicle and making sure it's ready to go if at any time we needed to leave the space station. But at that point, I am now just another one of the engineers working on board under the commander of the International Space Station, and so kind of balancing that of making sure that you're ready to go on the launch vehicle, but then also making sure you're ready to go for this long duration mission on the International Space Station, and balancing those two demands has been a little bit challenging. I was telling Chuck earlier though that one of the things that has made that a little bit easier is we have an amazing crew. We have an experienced crew, and so there has not been a lot of difficulties in that sense. We've all, I've been able to rely on all of their experiences, even, and I mentioned this earlier, even Victor, who's a rookie space flyer, but he brings an awful lot of operational experience with him, and I've certainly relied on that as well. I'm looking forward to, well, there's two answers to that. The first answer is, and I think that's for most every space flyer, is you look forward for a safe return. But also, I got to say, I really am looking forward to floating again. I remember before my first launch, dreaming, imagining what floating would be like, what living in that microgravity environment would be like. And then you get there, and it's incredible. It's amazing. It's this idea that there's no up or down. And then what's amazing is you get used to it, and you that becomes the norm. But then what's sad is you land, and for me, very shortly afterwards, once you get readapted to this 1G environment, you forget. And I'm trying to remember, what is it actually like to float like that and to be in that kind of environment. So I have to say that that's what I'm looking forward to again. I think the advice I give is anything is possible, and it doesn't matter where you come from, what your background is. If it's a dream of yours and you work hard at it, you pursue it. This is one of the things I really love about being on this flight with Victor. Victor and I come from different places in the United States. I come from a farm in Middle Missouri. Victor comes from L.A., kind of the inner city. And yet, if you look at our life journeys, they are very, very similar. Both of us went to college and played sports in college. We both came into the military. We both got into flying. We both got into flight tests, and we both have ended up here at NASA. And we're both getting ready to step on this rocket at the same time. And so, I think hopefully that maybe not just me, but maybe the combination of all four of us really can show people all across the country, no matter where you come from, no matter what your background is, that flying in space is a possibility. I am very excited about really just the whole capsule itself and our interface with that vehicle. The 3 touchscreen displays that we have, it just provides an amazing amount of flexibility for us to operate the vehicle in a way that works for us as a crew. And so that's been fun, and I'm really looking forward to executing that on orbit and seeing that all the ways, the techniques that we've been training for the last 2 years, seeing them actually play out in space. I do plan on taking the Eucharist again. You know, for me, having the Eucharist, having the body of Christ with me on space it helps you get through some of those stressful times. It helps you get through some of those times where you may feel a little vulnerable, right? Because for me, knowing that Jesus is with me, that helps me understand that I don't need to worry, that no matter what happens, that I'm going to be okay. And so I think it's in those moments, those reflections, and you know, that's when it's the quiet times. And sometimes that's the harder times, right? When you're out there and you're doing it, whether it's a spacewalk or whether you're capturing a vehicle or doing the science on board, you know, you get pretty busy and you're occupied. It's those moments when you get to either sit back and think about it before or after that I need to rely on that faith.
funny because sometimes I look back and there's no big event that happened and changed the course of my life. I think what happened is really my parents encouraging me, even though that seemed kind of ridiculous because I was living in a small village. I didn't know anybody who was even loosely related to space or even to aeronautics for that respect. But just buying the magazines and looking up stuff and going to a library and doing things like this. And then eventually I made my way into college, and then I studied aeronautics and space, and then I became an engineer, and then I became a pilot. So I think it was really one step at a time. There was no huge big figure that I could look up to because it was just too remote for me. I couldn't picture myself doing this because I was just this normal small kid from a normal small town. But I think it's just the merit of my parents nurturing that dream and never talking me out of it, and then trying to see what they do at their level. Find the books, find everything that could fuel that passion, and I'm hugely thankful to them today. It's actually quite a transition because the Soyuz being much less automated and me having been the pilot on the Soyuz with the Russian commander, you need to know everything. You need to know all the systems. You need to know every single dial and gauge because the vehicle is not going to present you the information in a synthetic way like the Dragon does. So there's a lot of work involved. I've spent, I think, 76 weeks in Russia over the years. Not only for this, but mostly for that, and then you get comfortable enough so that you can fly it, and then moving over to Dragon. So first of all, Dragon is much more automated, much more. It has big screens. It shows you all the information you need to know based on the phase of flight, and everything is clear, and there's nothing that you have to dig for, and also it pretty much does everything by itself. You're mostly monitoring, you're mostly validating some steps because that's what technology does for you. That's what cars will be tomorrow. That's what's good. So there's one, and also transitioning now, I'm a mission specialist, which means I'm not the commander or the pilot of the spacecraft, so less involved in the actual flying of the vehicle. And the way we've split the tasks is really. I'm saying with Zaki, the other mission specialist, we're going to be responsible of everything that's pretty much manual. So if somebody needs to open the hatch, somebody needs to, if there's an emergency and you need to use a raft or all that stuff is going to be on us. We're going to be in charge of cargo, of stowage. We're going to be in charge of valves, of going behind panels. We're going to be in charge of fixing things. So everything that's manual is going to be on us. And everything that's really related to flying the spacecraft from the screens, from the seats, is mostly on the other two crew members. I think what we're seeing is that now things are happening in a much more international context. Now you need partnerships to achieve the goals, because going to space is ambitious. Going to Mars is a lofty goal, and we'll need everybody's goodwill and participation to get there. And it makes things more complicated, obviously, because people don't speak the same language, they don't have the same priorities, they're not at the same place, technologically or historically or politically or whatever. So you have to harmonize all this, and that takes time, which is what sometimes people feel it should go faster. But over the long run, everybody's convinced that it's beneficial, because over the long run you achieve more. I think competition between countries is a very powerful engine. If you want to start, space exploration, that's going to get you there real fast. But then it dies pretty quickly, because once somebody has won the race, then what do you do? And why would you keep running? And then you switch to cooperation, you switch to scientific goals more than politically motivated goals, let's say. But then, you get maybe less budget, you get maybe less traction initially, but you get something more solid and something that can go for years or decades. And that's the phase that we're in space exploration. So I think that we're really going to the moon. I think we're going to go as a partnership. I think it makes it more challenging, but I think it also makes it more durable on the long run, and we're going to achieve more. So I'm looking forward to being part of this. ESA has actually signed with NASA some agreements, and they want to be a reliable partner for Artemis and the Gateway for the years to come for the long term. human beings are not designed, our brains are not equipped, for huge distances and big numbers. We can only understand, like for real, what we can feel, what we can experience. We're basic animals in that respect. So we gave ourselves some tools like mathematics to kind of understand the world a little bit better, but still we're not touched by numbers and we don't understand them. I mean, as long as there's more than 6 zeros, for me, I can perform a mathematical operation, but I don't know what it means. It doesn't mean anything to me. And so that's what's happening with the Earth. The Earth is just too big. It's just too vast. It doesn't look like it's fragile. It doesn't look like it needs taken care of. It doesn't look like things could go wrong. And then you take a huge step back by putting yourself 400 kilometers above the surface of the Earth, and then suddenly you see it. And then you know that Earth is round, it's finite, and it's not that big, and the cosmos around it is empty and vast and dead. You see it with your brain, but seeing it with your eyes and having this sensory experience of putting the Earth at your own scale, right? You reduce the scale of the Earth so that you can experience it, feel it, and that makes you really understand things from a completely different perspective. So I think that's what people mean when they talk about the overview effect or things like this. It's a change of perspective that puts the Earth and the global phenomena like climate change kind of at your scale, and at a scale that you can not only understand but also experience, and that changes everything.
Oh, I can't wait to see what it's like. I mean, especially comparing it to the other rockets. I'm sure some's got to be the same. The pressure in your chest of the 4+ Gs as you get up there. But staging in particular will be interesting. That's so uniquely different between vehicles. Can't wait to see what the staging is like and how we experience that. Everything, the sounds, the vibrations, the bangs, if there are any, the jolts. So in a lot of ways, it's very fascinating. Typically to understand how a muscle works, to really understand, you got to get a muscle biopsy. That is incredibly invasive. I mean, you're basically stabbing somebody. And so this is a way to learn all about the muscle with just a light touch. It's a sensor that is actually exquisitely sensitive to picking up the tensile strength of the muscle, the vibration, how it reacts to a very tiny signal that it puts in through there. So very non-invasive to do it. So it's two things. It's learning about the muscles in space. As you know, they atrophy. We try to keep them recovered with all the exercise we do. We are guinea pigs in a broad experiment that's looking at accelerated aging in space and see how that applies to aging on the ground and ways to mitigate it. But also as a technology demonstration. This is a unique way to take a technology, apply it to a unique area, see how it performs, and maybe even accelerate the technology itself, which will help people that otherwise have to get muscle biopsies, on the ground. Cold atom is one of those things that we're not there during the operation. That by itself is incredibly exciting. Recreating the coldest place in the universe at an atomic level, understanding. And as it turns out, being in a place on the space station where you don't feel the effects of gravity, turns out that's one way to help you get there. So you can understand how an atom acts right at the edge of the quantum arena in the macro world, something we don't completely understand, which I never would have thought that gravity would play a part of that, but it does.
Right.
I'm looking forward to, a lot of the fluid physics experiments that we do. Not only do you have 0G, but you can now contain a fluid or a semi-solid in a magnetic field, so it doesn't touch the boundaries of the container.
Wow.
And so now you can do all these incredible things like understand fluid flow. If there's a temperature difference, how does it flow inside of a sphere, in and out, into the center and back out again? You're not only learning about how liquids become solids and how you can make more perfect solids, but you're also learning about the physics and engineering equations and saying, yeah, we either got it right or we need to modify them. But it even applies on the macro level. How does the Earth's mantle work? And that fluid core. We can understand so much more about how these things work in a perfect sphere, which you simply cannot recreate when you experience the gravity field here on Earth. Oh, it was for us, it was a real gift at the time. We were looking out the window and saw ammonia, the coolant, on the outside of the space station because it's a big power station. If you lose your coolant, you lose your power eventually. We saw it spewing out into space. Didn't know what it was, called the ground, and they said, yep, we see this too. We were about to undock and leave the space station. I was about to, because my time was up. So it's not going to be me that goes out and fixes it because I'm getting ready to leave. But indeed, they assigned Chris and myself, went out the hatch in 36 hours, still the fastest time from problem to going out the hatch.
Yeah.
So we just had our wits and wonderful instruction from the ground when we went out there. So we were very excited to suddenly be in this spectacular place, crawling on the outside of your living quarters where we had lived for 6 months, and heart pounding, just thrilled to be there, but had a very serious task at hand. 5 hours later, we were back in, did a repair. It turned out weeks later they found out that repair fixed it. But interestingly, re-entered, and about 48 hours later, I was at home taking out the trash and looking up in space going, did that really just happen? I was always attracted to bioengineering. Don't know why, but the application to the human body, even though I was a physics major and an engineer, a graduate student as an engineer, partly was that I was hanging out with a lot of medical students, and I felt like I had enjoyed the interaction with human beings, and then applying science to humans fascinated me. So I went into medicine largely because of that. The mechanical differences that our bodies undergo when we hit zero G, we call it. There is gravity, we just don't feel it because we're in orbit. Your torso changes its shape. Your heart is still working to pump blood up to your brain, which it has to do so we can stay conscious on the Earth. But that means it's shoving blood up into your brain. Maybe there's an intracranial pressure problem. We don't know yet. Maybe that affects the eyes as well. There is some effect in the eyes. We don't know why. So it becomes this really fascinating pressure problem. What amazes me that this is the physics applies even on the cellular level as a cytoskeleton in a mammalian cell, as we're finding out changes because it's not experiencing gravity. Its expression, its hormonal and protein expression changes. Direct relation of the mechanical change to the way physiology works. There's a whole wide world that we don't know. We've just taken the first few steps on the beach of this whole new world.
my squadron commander, who had earlier in his life had been an engineer at NASA Langley Field, NASA that center, encouraged me to think about, at that time we were talking, it was NACA, NASA didn't quite exist yet. And he said, you'll get a lot more versatile and different type of flying and many different aircraft, because what NASA does is look at new improvements in aircraft that would be for safety or for greater performance. Whereas if you went to a company, you'd probably be involved in the development and testing, eventually testing an aircraft, and might be tied up for, 5 to 6 years and just on one aircraft. So anyway, I did apply at several NASA centers at Ames and California, at Langley in Virginia, and at Lewis Research Center in Cleveland. And at the time I was applying, NASA had become NASA by about a year, and the original 7 astronauts had been chosen. So the only opening was at Lewis Research Center, that is now Glenn, named after John Glenn, and that's where I applied and was accepted. So that's sort of my NASA career in the fall of 1959. Well, Apollo hadn't started yet. This was strictly Mercury when I joined NASA. The only ties I had to Mercury, and incidentally, at the time, most of us thought possibly Mercury was it. I mean, they had in mind to see how humans could survive in space and their capabilities. And most of us in the business thought, well, these 7 people will go do their flights, and that'll be it. There was, there's nothing clear that there would be anything behind Mercury. So I was working at Lewis, and we did develop with an AJ-2 Navy bomber aircraft, 3 engines, 2 recips, and a jet engine. It had a fairly large payload bay. So we developed it into a second active zero-G program in the country. The Air Force had the first. They had the program that ran for a while at White Sands, and they moved it then to Wright-Patterson, more under the guise of the aerospace medicine group of Air Force, testing human subjects. They flew human subjects through 20, 25 seconds at most of zero-G. And we had a similar capability with the AJ-2, about 20, 25 seconds. But our mission was more testing fluid systems for things like the Centaur rocket, the early SNAP-8 nuclear power generator that was used in satellite programs. We weren't testing the nuclear part, but just the fluid cooling system that was part of that system in our bomb bay. So we were involved more in that accord. And this is long before JSC got built up and existed, and they had their zero-G program for astronauts, if you will. So we had several other programs that involved still more flight tests, we could carry aloft in a B-57. We had 2 of them actually, an A and A model was the first one ever built in this country under license to Martin from England. And we launched 2-stage rockets out of that off Wallets, heading out toward the Atlantic. That could get up to looking at boundary layer data, getting up to about Mach 8 with the second stage with telemetry data. And we also had we supported a continuance of zero-G for more time. Experiments that were flown on top of an Narrowbie rocket that were launched. We would fly the people and some of the parts and supplies down to the Chincoteague station for their launches off Wallops. And we had a solar cell development program using a B-57 where we could get up very high altitude. We had, in essence, a black tube with an outlet in the aft fuselage to point this thing at the sun to collect a more advanced solar cell development. But those kinds of things more. We weren't into, particularly like NASA did at other centers, into aircraft handling qualities or performance or that kind of thing. So anyway, I had 3.5 years at Lewis, and we did also, with Jack Enders, participate a little bit into the development of the Mastiff. That was that thing shown in the First Man movie, where they tumbled them around in a gyro, 3-axis gyro. We developed that at Lewis, and some of the Mercury, well, I guess all of the Mercury guys came through to practice on that rig as if they had to manually control Mercury capsule. It might be either normal control or out of control. I don't recall the Gemini people coming through, but they must have. I'm trying to think of when they came aboard, really. I think they came aboard in, can't remember the time, 63 maybe. And so they eventually, just because it was still operational, may have cycled them through as well. So anyway, I continued the trail because I really always wanted to get to Edwards, which NASA's facility there, Flight Research Center, because it was kind of the premier aircraft test operation. The X-15, the glorious program of the X-15 was ongoing at the time. And it took me about 3.5 years before an opening occurred. And incidentally, in that trail, I was following Neil Armstrong. Neil had started also at Lewis, and then he had transferred to Edwards. And so about just after he applied and joined the astronaut program, that I got the open slot and moved to Edwards. So I was kind of following Neil. And as NASA employees, for us, it was just another transfer. We were already NASA employees with GS ratings. And so for us, each of those moves was just a transfer to a different NASA center. But anyway, I went to Edwards then for another about 3.5 years before I decided to apply for the astronaut program. Well, it was a very hard choice, indecision to make, because by then, of course, the Gemini program was in swing, and Apollo, of course, was in the background. That was going to happen, and people were going to go to the moon. I was thinking about that, and one time Neil came back and visited back at Edwards at Flight Research Center, and Don Malick and I, another pilot, got a brief time set with Neil and asked him about what it was like being an astronaut down there in Houston. And his description, which turned out to be pretty true, was, we sit in a lot of meetings, we sit in a simulator a lot, and there's not much good flying. And so that was certainly true, as it turned out. But even with that, I'll call it, from my standpoint, at Edwards, I was flying almost every day. Took 2 pages of my flight log when I went back to Flight Research Center years later. They wanted me to talk about the old days, and I picked those 2 pages in particular because, and that was 1 month. In that 1 month, I'd flown 9 different types of aircraft. I'd been involved either in support roles or directly involved in 3 different test programs. So it was kind of hard for me to think of leaving that, which was, in truth, was the most fun time of my life flying, was at FRC. But the thought of getting a chance to go to the moon, which certainly I looked at would be a great adventure, was too hard to pass up. So I did apply in 1966, and I guess I applied actually in the fall of '65, and was chosen as one of the group of 19 in April of 1966. The original 19, we were named by John Young. And the group chosen at Edwards, of course, I knew Joe Engle because he was often at the Flight Research Center. He had been flying the X-15, and that's where the simulator was they trained, was at NASA. And so I saw Joe often at our office there. The others chosen I knew vaguely through the test pilot school, Charlie Duke, Al Warden, and Ed Mitchell. And Ken Mattingly actually was a couple of classes later in the test pilot school, so I didn't really know Ken that well, Ken Mattingly, but he also went through the Edwards complex there with the aerospace test pilot school. But otherwise within the group, I'm just thinking, I don't think I knew any of the other 19, many who had come straight from the military. Normally you have a year of rookie training that they have pretty well established by then of different classroom stuff, some field geology experience, visiting all the plants where the vehicles are made, some system training, and they didn't give us anything on Gemini because that was kind of behind us. It wasn't behind us. In fact, Gemini 8 had just flown when I arrived at Houston, where Neil and Dave Scott had gotten into that problem and aborted the mission early. But so that they had us concentrate mostly on the system stuff was on the Apollo vehicles. But the things were so busy and there was so much ground to cover that they went into what they call support crew assignments to cover the waterfront. And Ed Mitchell and I were assigned to Jim McDivitt, who was scheduled to fly, at the time it was Apollo 8, was going to be the first mission to fly the lunar module. It was kind of interesting. We went to Jim's office, sat down, and we talked a little while, and his really only guidance was a simple, almost one-sentence statement of it. He said, I tell you, I want you and Ed to go to Grumman and make sure I got a good limb to fly. And that was it. So we ended up spending between both of us over 7 months, over 7 months in the next year at Grumman and vehicle test. And a lot of the work at Grumman wasn't just the vehicle test. It was trying to help them get some order into the flows and the testing protocol. You have to realize Grumman was very steeped in, for many, many years in aircraft development, and they had a very good test operations around airplane business. NASA had a little different way of doing things that they developed through Mercury and Gemini at McDonnell. Much more rigid, formal test procedures, that kind of thing. And Grumman also had the problem of a huge buildup. I don't remember, but I'd guess they had to grow like 8,000 people to support the LEM design, test, and manufacturing and test. So they had a kind of a core group that came out of the aircraft test world, but really many of these new people had to get totally indoctrinated to this new way of doing business. Some of them had never been in it before. So that was a big growing up learning curve problem through probably the first half of that time we were there, just trying to encourage Grumman to not be so driven by schedule that they didn't get some order to the preparation and what I call pre-test meetings, more like a flight readiness review, to make sure all the ducks were in order before you went in the test. So there was a lot of attention we paid to that as much as just being in the vehicle involved in testing. I guess I'd say our launch period, right immediately leading up to launch, was a little bit subdued. I was, of course, excited that I was finally getting to fly. Got trained to go fly Apollo 8, and as a backup to Bill Anders. And that was interesting, too. You know, Apollo 8 was originally Apollo 9, because I mentioned McDivitt was going to fly 8. But the LEM did not get ready, so they flip-flopped those two missions. So, in fact, when I was originally assigned as the backup to Apollo 8, when Mike Collins got a medical problem and left the crew assignment, Jim Lovell moved up from the backup crew to be the command module pilot on Apollo 9 at that time. And that opened a slot for me to become the backup lunar module pilot to Bill Anders. And I was in the backup crew with Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. We were the backup crew. And as it turned out, backup crew didn't get to fly that mission. The prime crew flew. And I stayed on with the same assignment, the lunar module pilot, now to Apollo 11, because Mike Collins had overcome his medical problem and moved back in with priority, rightfully so, as the command module pilot on Apollo 11. And so I got to serve another backup assignment as Buzz Aldrin's backup. And from there, so that was 2 full training cycles, and you trained equally to a prime crew. You were prepared to go fly, and so you'd done all the hard work, except you got to watch somebody else go fly. And so I was excited, obviously, to finally have my chance. It was subdued because of the crew change-out, and not the way, anyway, the way the movie portrayed it. There was big concern about Jack filling in for Ken, because the same things I just described. We knew Jack was trained to go fly the mission, very capable technically. He might have missed out on some of the last meetings with the photo guys who kept changing everything for the photo clan. But that was about the only thing Jack might have sort of been behind Ken in the preparation, while he was in lunar orbit, the stuff he might have done. So it was unfair to those people, both of them, Jim and TK, because TK had guests and family fly into the launch, motel and hotels rooms reserved, and Jack didn't have much time to plan to do that for who he might have wanted to be at the launch. We were allowed to take a personal preference kit, and it was quite a preparation. I spent probably 2-3 months before the flight, occasionally pulsing, calling friends, family, what they might want me to fly on the mission. But it had to be very small and very lightweight to arrange what I carried in my PPK. And of course, Ken had his packed, and Jack did not have the time to do that. So it's unfair that way, if you want to call it, to those 2 people. But anyway, I had butterflies. I'd say I was excited. Here I was going to finally get to do this when it comes to launch. Basically, examples, I had a fellow's mason ring. An favorite aunt, wanted me to carry her rosary beads. She was Catholic, and I could not do that. It was too much bulk, so I took the crucifix off. I carried a top sergeant set of stripes and a big Marine Corps emblem. My second lieutenant bars, naval aviation wings, those kind of things. I've always described the 2 things different, struck me as being most different from my aircraft flying experience, was the views out the window. Even though we were at fairly low altitude, less, I think about 110 miles altitude or less, a little less. But of course, I'd been in airplanes, Zoom flights, I'd been to almost 90,000 feet in the 104. 90,000 feet is not 100 and something miles, so it still was a different perspective with sunrises and sunsets very quickly as you went around the moon, although we only went around a couple of times before heading out to the moon. So that was, and of course the sights at approaching and en route into the moon and approaching the moon, and one circle around the backside, even those kind of looks out the window, time seemed, am I really here looking at what I'm looking at? The only other unusual thing was being able to float around, in 0G, yourself or objects, that kind of thing. It's kind of euphoric sensation. Otherwise, all the G levels, vibration, shake, rattle, and roll, all that launch and entry were less than I'd experienced in airplanes. In the procedure, either setting up the vehicle or shutting down, there was a step you did that. There's no whole procedure, and it would make a bang. And normally you would, I guess most people would tell the rest of the crew, I'm going to throw this valve and it's going to make a sound, sort of a bang. And I often, in testing we did over the period, wouldn't bother telling them, so I'd give them a little surprise. But it wasn't something you just threw haphazardly just for fun. at the time this happened, I was still in the lunar module, putting things back in storage where they belonged that we had pulled out for the TV show. And we kind of did a show and tell thing. And as soon as I could drift up through the tunnel and got to my right couch position, looking at scanning the instrument panel, which of course had about 6 or 7 caution lights on, caution warning lights on, the master alarm, and the blue computer restart light. The gauges for the oxygen, cryogenics oxygen, hydrogen, on oxygen tank 2 in 2 different meters, the needles were at the bottom of those gauges. Those were fed by different sensors. Unlikely multiple sensors fail at one time. So it was almost for sure we had lost oxygen tank 2. And I was just sick to my stomach with disappointment, because I knew without reference in mission rules that this constituted an abort. And we had lost they probably even going in the lunar orbit, much less landing. And all that work and 2 previous missions, and now here a big chance in landing on the moon and walking on the moon was gone in an instant. I did not think it was life-threatening. Tank 1 looked okay at the time. So we'd have kept everything fully powered up and just come home ASAP as soon as possible. It was obviously an incredible sight to see it up close. When I say up close, we were a little over 130 miles above it at the max height as we went around. To see this lifeless, beat-up rock is a way with different shades from dark to almost a white light color of gray. Of course, the moon has no atmosphere. It has no visible water. Compared to the beautiful Earth, you could see way far away where you still had color. It was colorized. It still had blues of oceans, appearances, browns of continents, and you could even see cloud patterns, huge cloud patterns. The moon was obviously quite bizarre compared to the Earth. It was clear it would not likely be a very habitable place for us humans. I had a lot of confidence in the LEM because, I'd been so involved. Of course, there was always a concern when you use a vehicle not quite like it was planned to be used, because we had the power down severely to make sure the 6 batteries, that was the primary power for the landing craft, that it would now make it for 4 days rather than its planned 2-day lifetime. And the vehicle did get very chilly. Secondary concern, though, was the water separator at that lower temperature was not functioning properly, and so it was not getting rid of the moisture from our breathing the moist air out each breath, and water was building up that we could see in the LEM because it has no inner wall. It has netting material. We couldn't afford the weight of a wall. And you can see through the netting at the wiring bundles and the connectors and plumbing lines. And water globules were building up at every turn of a wiring bundle, at the connector interfaces, or turn in the plumbing. That was concern about electric shorts. And of course, that same thing was in the command module when Jack and I got into power. It ended up 2.5 hours before entry. That's when they gave us the go-ahead to start the power up. 2.5 hours before we were going to hit the entry interface. Jack had got out towels to wipe off the instrument panel, which was covered with water. And so same thing we worried about. It turns out what precluded that was call it the goodness of a tragedy and an accident of the Apollo 1 fire. After any accident, aircraft accident, or in that case, spacecraft, you have an accident board, and they go through all the causal effects and, of course, present what you should do different. to preclude that happening again. And of course, the big thing people know about is they redesigned the hatch so it would open outward, because the crew was trapped in there during that time. A whole new hatch design, and a number of other things. But one that saved us was a very much stricter criteria on wiring. That had to be ties every so many inches along a wire bundle, hold it tightly together. That anyway, you had a clamp, it had to be perfectly round and not egg-shaped, holding the wiring. And most importantly, hermetically seal the connectors with a material called Melcor, where the wiring went into connector, like 48-pin connectors or whatever size. That sealing made them waterproof. So that's what precluded us, even though we had all this abundance of water everywhere and behind panels and on all the wiring, we never got an electric short. See, I left the astronaut office after I backed up Apollo 16, went off to Harvard Business School for a PMD program, a 4-month pressure cooker program for management development. And I came back and left the astronaut office and went into the orbiter projects office under Aaron Cohen. So for 4 years, in fact, I was on the team that evaluated the proposals that were submitted by the 4 contractors to choose who should build a shuttle, the orbiter. So then I was involved very intently. It was the program office is a busy time through the whole design development of the orbiter at Rockwell. Then I got the pleasure of going back to the astronaut office when I was named to be the commander of Crew 1 of the 2 crews that would get to fly Enterprise. So it was kind of a womb to tomb episode where I was there from day 1 of the development through getting to fly the first flight. I'd like to see continued exploration in any vein we can do it, unmanned and manned, because I'm kind of interested in the future of the human race. I'm interested in what is this all about? I mean, this big universe we're in. You know, all aspects in that regard. I think the Creator would have wanted us to use to the best we can in affordability that the talent we've been blessed with. We're uniquely, at least, the only creatures we know. Of course, we don't know that much outward in the universe, but at least on Earth, we're the only creatures that have ever evolved that can do it. There's no other creature, even though they say dolphins are smart, whatever, they're not going to build a starship. So we should be using our talent in that direction. So I think it's a goodness thing.
I obviously understand, as we all do as ESA astronauts and astronauts in general, that we have this amazing opportunity, this privilege of flying to space, because behind us we have, entire countries, entire community, entire industries, our agencies, the European Space Agency, the Italian Space Agency, and all the national agencies of the member state. And that's, it sounds a little bit rhetorical, but I think as astronauts, we really feel that, all the people we interact with, the people we meet, and the special character of this community. I think there is something to the space community that derives from the fact that most people who ended up working with space did so because they dreamt about it, because there's something about space that appeals to the human spirit and that makes especially young people dream. And so a lot of the people that are part of this community, they work with us because they really were passionate and dreamt probably from childhood and really worked hard to end up in the space business and giving their contribution, be it as scientists, be it as engineers, being as managers, maybe ministers. So everyone gives their contribution. And because of this incredible teamwork, then in the end, you have this very visible, this very powerful event, which is a launch to space, and Europeans being able to be up there, work up there, and bring forward the science endeavors of the European and world scientific community. The Dragon is certainly a little bit different than Soyuz in terms of comfort from some points of view. As probably everybody can see from the images, you have a lot more space, the seats are much bigger, especially for, it's not my case, but especially for crew members who are a little bit taller. It's certainly nice to have a little bit more of internal volume. It has a more modern, let's say, human to machine interface. It's obviously it's the product of a very recent design. So it has like touch screens, and we have iPads that we can use. So in that sense, it's certainly a little bit more comfortable. We will also spend quite a bit of a longer time on the way to space station. So Soyuz was a little bit cramped, but it was a very quick ride. It only took us 6 hours from launch to docking. I think nowadays they even do it a bit faster. In the case of Dragon, it depends on what day exactly we will launch. So it will depend, on the weather mostly. But it could be anything, between maybe 12, 14 hours if it gets really fast, to all the way to over 30 hours. So it's certainly nice that we have a little bit more space in there. Well, first of all, I'm looking forward to having a second experience. I think there is something special about doing something for the first time, the excitement of it. But I think that there is also something special about doing something for the second time. So you're not so overwhelmed with impressions and emotions and the whole experience anymore. And you can really, kind of like slow it down in your mind and really enjoy it, and also shape it in the way you want it a lot more because of the experience that you have. So I'm very much looking forward to experiencing this again as an experienced flyer and not a rookie anymore. In terms of experiments, I mean, I'm really looking forward to doing it all. So it's not like I have my personal favorites, but maybe if we want to highlight something today, I would certainly highlight some of the new experiments of the Italian Space Agency, specifically in the field of life sciences. There's more. Many of them are continuing experiments that have been performed already by previous astronauts, notably Luca Parmitano. And then that's of course very important because in science you need multiple runs of an experiment and multiple subjects and samples. But there's also some new ones. I think the olive oil was mentioned already, but there's another one, I believe it's called Prometeo, that looks into the potential of the addition of specific antioxidant nanoparticles, the potential of those nanoparticles to prevent degeneration of nervous cell neurons due to oxidative stress, which is very much prominent in the space environment. And another one, also a life science experiment, looks into the effects of microgravity and the space environment on the function of ovarian cells. And that's really interesting, both from a theoretical point of view, right, to help build a theory of organogenesis, how you build organs during the reproductive function, but also what could be potential targets for drugs, for medicines to improve ovarian function. I think as astronauts, we are all very grateful to our families, to our spouses, to our husbands and wives who have to hold the home front while we are gone fulfilling our big dreams. So, a big thank you to my partner and of course to all the spouses of our crews that makes it possible for us to do our job.
it's like a marathon that you have to keep keep a very good pace of yourself so that you don't burn out in 6 months, because every day we are really busy working on experiments and observation, and quite often we have to do a lot of maintenance tasks inside and outside of the space station. Mm-hmm. And we have cargo supply vehicles arriving and docking. So every day is different. And it seemed to me like it was as if it was only for a couple of weeks. I didn't feel that it was for 6 months because we were so busy. Still, I really vividly remember when I first launched on the Space Shuttle Endeavour back in January of 1996. Of course, it was the first time. I had no idea what it would be like to launch and feel the zero gravity. But the acceleration inside of the Space Shuttle was pretty magnificent. It was very interesting. Very strong jolt at the launch pad, and it was only just 3 Gs for the ascent loading, but was first time that I was able to experience that kind of a big acceleration for an extended period of more than 8 minutes. Wow. And the view was so magnificent. Of course, I have seen pictures and videos of the beautiful whole planet many times on TV and the movies, but the first time in your naked eyes to see that home planet, it was beyond description. As far as the training in JAXA for human space flight is concerned, it's focused on the Japanese experiment module Hubble. Yes. Its systems and experiments utilization part is trained in Japan, and but other than that, like launching and returning to and from space, all of these trainings are done in either Houston at NASA Johnson Space Center, or in Russia, in the Gagarin Training Center, Cosmonaut Training Center. So Japanese part of training is somewhat limited compared to what we are taught in the United States and NASA. So we are really focused on maximizing the utilization of the space station, especially in the Japanese Hubble module. And I think the methodology of teaching and training astronauts is very similar, I think, between JAXA and United States, but the scope or the areas of the training coverage is different. It's been really exciting to see the SpaceX launch, and has always been in the past. Elon Musk's team has done an incredible job of developing launch vehicle in such a low cost, and so of course whenever a Japanese astronauts launches on a spacecraft, it creates a lot of attention and excitement among the people in Japan. So this is another very exciting one. Yeah, when I was 5 years old, I saw the Apollo 11 lunar landing, and at the time I had a strong longing for flying in space, and I thought it was impossible for a small boy in Japan to fly in space because there were no Japanese astronauts. But I was really interested in space and aeronautics, and I studied hard in science, math, and then studied aeronautics. And as a result, I was able to become an engineer in the airline industry, and then I was able to eventually become an astronaut candidate. So find who you are and what you're really interested in, and from that set a clear goal, and even if you fail, never give up, and a dream will come true. And thanks to the international collaboration, there will be a lot more people from all over the world who will join the international space exploration. The ISS International Space Program celebrates 20 years anniversary this year of continuous human presence. And with that partnership, we will continue to explore space internationally to the moon and Mars and beyond. So I hope many of you will be interested in working and flying in space together. I thought that each time when I flew, I thought it was my last flight, because I put 100% of my energy into one of them, and I'll be trying to do the same thing if I can get to fly in space again.
being a person from the UAE, specifically in the city of Al Ain in the 80s, we could see really everything in the night sky. We see the Milky Way, stars, and I even remember seeing a comet. I can't recall what was the name, but I remember seeing that. It was so visible. So that was probably the beginning for me, wondering whether it's possible to go to space or maybe visit other planets. And seeing cartoons and movies about space, that was the dream. And I do remember finishing high school, and I wanted to be a pilot, but that was not possible because I was wearing glasses. So turning towards engineering and serving for almost 20 years in the military. And at an age of 37, I thought it might be impossible to be an astronaut. But I do remember the call from His Highness Sheikh Mohammed, Prime Minister of Dubai, when he made an open call for everybody with capabilities and passion to enroll in the first program, the UAE astronaut program. I remember applying among 4,000 applicants, and was lucky enough, privileged enough to be selected along with my colleague Hazan Mansouri. So it was a wonderful journey so far. After the first mission, now we're talking about the second mission, a long duration. So I can't be happier than this. I think this is a natural progression towards human space flight. After a very successful mission in 2019, when my colleague Hazan Mansouri went to space, I think that was a big boost for space program overall. So I remember going to schools and universities and even talking to ordinary people in the street. They all ask about space. They have questions about the missions and how is it like to be living in space and on board the station. So again, it's a natural progression towards chasing a new goal. That's why we are committed to this 6 months duration mission. And in the future, the UAE, I think, is going wherever the humanity overall is going. We also the successful Artemis 1 launch. It was a great proof of concept. Soon we'll have some people on board the Orion capsule, and definitely the UAE will try to be a part of that. We all know that the UAE has signed the Artemis Accord, and it's a matter of an opportunity. I think we have the will, we have the support from our leadership. Hopefully the UAE will commit to this program, the Artemis. We're looking towards, hopefully in the future, seeing an astronaut probably orbiting or even landing on the lunar surface. I think, yeah, we are lucky enough to have some, I would say, bags we can take to space with personal items. So I'm taking some family photos. This is important. I'm taking some toys from my kids that I haven't told them yet, but I'm gonna probably take some pictures of that and then send it down. I'm taking some university t-shirts. Again, this is exclusive. I haven't told my universities yet, and don't tell them, right? Yeah, it's something that I'm looking towards taking to space, sharing that item with people on Earth. So I want to keep that connection with people on Earth using that item. So lucky enough, we have a rigorous training schedule. We train 2 hours every day to maintain the bone density and the muscle density as well. So hopefully there won't be a big of an impact on our bodies because we have measures. Yet we will still have some changes that we need to study actually when we come back. That's why we're taking samples before, during, and after the mission.
it's a huge honor. It really is, and it's a testament to the relationship that ESA and NASA have built up over the last many years on board the International Space Station, and it bodes well for the future of our collaboration, especially when we're talking about going back to the moon with Artemis, where ESA have taken on more and more responsibility in building and designing the European service module for Orion, and also some of the main modules for the Gateway space station. I mean, my dream of becoming an astronaut goes back to elementary school, back to, I think, 4th or 5th grade. I had just moved from Denmark to California, and as part of the normal curriculum in 4th or 5th grade, I learned about NASA and the Apollo missions to the moon. And it was in particular the Apollo missions that fascinated me. They, even to this day, I think they are some of the most incredible things that we have done as humans. Back then in 4th or 5th grade, of course, it was the journey of exploration, the sense of adventure that fascinated me and instilled in me this dream of becoming an astronaut. And then as the years went on, I also became fascinated with science, and so I just, being an astronaut is kind of the perfect combination of those two things: the scientific research we do in space, coupled with the personal journey of exploration and discovery that spaceflight is. I have children, ages of 4, 6, and 9. My other crewmates, Jasmine and Constantine, their children are a little bit younger. They're 1 and 2. And of course, Satoshi's children are adults. And so everyone felt that my children were had the right age to be able to help select a zero-G indicator and would get some meaning out of it. The other Jasmine's and Constantine's kids were probably a little bit too young, so I was lucky enough to be able to ask my children what they thought would be a good zero-G indicator. Yeah, so I have a whole slew of experiments that focus on health and well-being. A couple of them focus on sleep and quality of sleep. One of the challenges on board the space station is that we don't have a natural day-night cycle, and so our natural circadian rhythm is disturbed. The space station travels at a speed of about 17,500 miles per hour, which means that we see on a typical day 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets. And so it's hard to fall into a natural day-night cycle. And so one of the experiments that I'm involved in is using a special light panel that changes the color of the light in my crew quarters from kind of bluish tones in the morning to more reddish tones at night. And the idea is that by being exposed to the same changes in light that we experience here on the Earth when the sun rises and when the sun sets, hopefully that'll help to set my circadian rhythm. And then to actually measure the quality of my sleep, I'm participating in an experiment where I'll be sleeping with electrodes in my ear that'll measure my brain activity, and from that the scientists can see how long I'm in deep sleep and how long I'm in REM sleep, and that'll inform them about the quality of my sleep. And then if we talk about our mental well-being, I'm going to be using a virtual reality set which contains video images of a few places on Earth that I know from Denmark and a few other places that I've picked, and that'll give me a chance to hopefully unwind and feel like I'm back on Earth, enjoying nature rather than being confined to the International Space Station. I'm just looking forward to getting back on board the space station. I know that's not an exciting answer, but the space station really is an incredible place. I didn't realize how big it was until I actually approached it in Soyuz and could see out the windows just how big it was. And then floating on board the space station and living there for 10 days, it just it's so much fun being up there. The science that we do during the day is very, very interesting, and in some cases groundbreaking. And we're busy with that. And then in the evenings, we're having dinner with our friends and colleagues. We're looking out of the windows, looking at our beautiful planet, just sharing the experience with each other. And so just that whole experience is just so nice to be part of. Yeah, success in any field requires hard work. There's just no way around it. Whether you want to be a sports star or a pop star or an astronaut, it requires hard work. And in particular, if you want to be an astronaut, then it has to be, your background has to be in the STEM field. So you got to pick science, engineering, math, or something similar, and then just work hard towards your goal.
Well, I was 6 years old. We're coming up on the 50th anniversary of that. So, but the lead up to that, Apollo 8, when they first orbited the moon, and Apollo 11, there was a lot of commotion back there, a lot of interest, excitement about this happening. And I thought it was, I remember I was a little kid thinking this is really important. This is going to be the important thing, that most important thing that's happened in hundreds of years, and it's something that will mark the time, first time we left the planet. And I was only 6, but I want to grow up to be like Neil Armstrong. So that it really made quite an impression on me. So it just kind of rekindled my interest, and it was the camaraderie between the astronauts. The teamwork, the way they stuck by each other and were doing things together, and I thought that was interesting and cool. And then also the view out of the scenes, the view out of John Glenn's spacecraft as he's orbiting the Earth. That was an experience I wanted to have. If you give up, it's all over. So it's important, I think, to keep trying. And I think one thing in my case and I tell this to young people, that if you're having trouble with something, it's not because you're stupid or anything. It's just that things are sometimes difficult and sometimes need a little help. So, I learned as growing up that whenever you have trouble in school or wherever it might be, go seek out help. Talk to the teacher or the teaching assistant or whoever is available to you, and maybe the approaching is a little bit differently. Just don't give up. Just look for a different way to go about whatever it is you're trying to do, and give it another try. My qualifying exam I had to take to get my doctorate degree, and didn't do well the first time I tried it, but I was going about it, I guess, the wrong way. And it was an oral exam. It was written in also an oral exam, and so you had to be good on your feet, and it wasn't something that I had practiced much. So that was the part of the exam I particularly had trouble with. So talking to some others, they had said they had the same trouble when they took it. It was just that they prepared a little bit differently by getting other people and other students at the school to help by asking them questions like you would be asked in the exam, which is you got to think on your feet and answer quickly without writing it down on a piece of paper. You had to give what you were talking about, what you were thinking about, what you were thinking about. You had to express verbally to a group, and so just practicing in that way was a big help. In grad school, I had worked on, it was in the human machine systems lab, but we looked at issues of humans and computers and robots working together, sort of. So how people can control manipulator arms to get the job done in different environments, whether it be undersea or other hazardous environments like space. And so that gave me the background to try to solve those types of problems, help the human operator control a robot arm in space. And so when I got to NASA after graduating, I was able to take that knowledge that I had and apply it toward the space station and the space shuttle robot arm. Yeah, the first thing you want to do when you get to space is take a look, and when you get up there, and so you make it to orbit, and I unstrapped, and while I was still in my spacesuit, floated over to a window and took a look. And it was during the day, a day pass over the Indian Ocean, and it was spectacular. That's the first thing you want to do when you get there is see what it's like. Take a look around. It's just learn how to get around again, taking it slow, and don't make any abrupt moves or push off too hard on anything, and just kind of take your time to get used to it. But it takes a little while. You get better and better at it. At first, you're kind of awkward with it, but at the end of a few days, you're feeling much better about it and able to get around pretty easily. At the time, I flew in May of '09, almost 10 years ago now, and right around that time, a few months earlier, social media, particularly Twitter, was starting to become more popular. President Obama tweeted during the inauguration. I remember hearing about it. I was focused on trying to get ready to fly in space, so I really wasn't paying attention to much else. But I remember hearing about it, and NASA saw this as an opportunity to share their story, get the word out about what's happening, and they approached me. It wasn't my idea. About a month before the launch, they came up to me and they had cleared with my commander, and it just was a timing thing that we happened to be flying next, and they thought that I would be a good candidate for the person to be able to send the first tweet from space and to start using Twitter. So I said, okay, and they set it up for me, and I started tweeting, but I guess it was that last month or so, telling people what I was doing and how I was getting ready to go to space. And then I was able to, once I got to space, and I sent the first tweet from space once we got there successfully.
Well, I was this, kid that couldn't pay attention or do his homework basically my whole life. And, I think if I was in school today, I'd probably be, maybe diagnosed with ADD or ADHD. It seemed like it was impossible for me to pay attention. I got to college my first year and I was struggling, and just happened to one day go into the college bookstore, not to buy a book, to buy gum or something, snacks maybe, who knows. But, I saw this book on the shelf and, right in front, and I picked it up and I started, looking at the back, and I was interested enough in it. I took it home. It had a red, white, and blue cover and a really cool title, and I read it for the next few days. And the book was The Right Stuff by Tom Wolfe, and the way Tom, just maybe Tom's writing style, but also I think I was felt like I had some things in common with the guys in the book, like personality-wise maybe, but certainly not work ethic or I should say the ability to be a good student and do well in school. And I felt like, if I could change that one thing, maybe I could be a pilot in the Navy someday, which is something I never actually considered because I thought it was just beyond my abilities. And, so that's what I did. I got inspiration from this book, and I taught myself basically through like some kind of brute force method how to study and pay attention. And eventually I did, started doing better. I changed colleges, changed majors, and then, wound up in the Navy and eventually had the opportunity to become a test pilot and then later an astronaut. The most difficult thing is, you're away from your family and you can't come home, and even in an emergency, emergency on the ground, that kind of separation. You can't go outside. There's no sun, no wind, no rain, no nature. You're locked up. Even though it's an incredible place and it's a very rewarding experience, but it's still, still a challenge because, the environment you're living in, the fact that everything floats is on one hand fun, but on the other makes things more difficult to do. You got to be much more organized and careful about things and thoughtful about, where you're putting stuff, making sure something doesn't float away. You may never see it again. The space station is a very busy place. Yeah, so that's, both the positives and the negatives, I guess. Different culture than in the U.S. I think it's one of the best parts of the space station program is that it's this international space station, so you get to experience people with different backgrounds, different experiences, different cultures, like I said, not just in Russia, but all the international partners. The Russians do things differently than us. They, have to do a lot more with less money. So it's often that translates into being very, very practical in certain ways. They definitely have a much more academic approach to training than we do in the U.S. And I think that is just, part of their whole educational system. It seems to me, like my understanding is, how we train for spaceflight is very, very similar to how kids, learn the Russian Haise system in the, first and second grade. Their method of, evaluation is very similar with oral exams. It's an interesting experience. They're two completely different vehicles, very little in common except for the fact that they, both launch people into space. The space shuttle was a very complex vehicle that could do many different missions, launching satellites into space, repairing satellites, putting a science laboratory in the back of the vehicle, robotics, spacewalks, launched like a rocket with 7 million pounds of thrust, landed like a big giant glider, whereas the Soyuz is designed strictly for putting 3 people into low Earth orbit. I mean, it can carry some cargo, but it can't do anything else. You know, you're not doing a spacewalk from the Soyuz. You're not going up and repairing a satellite. You're not deploying a satellite. So, you know, it's much less sophisticated, which in some ways is good because it's probably a little less risky, even though, you know, the Russians had 2 fatal accidents in the Soyuz, just like we had, you know, 2 fatal ones in the space shuttle. But, you know, to ask which one I prefer, it depends on what I'm trying to do, actually. If I was just trying to get to the space station, I think the Soyuz would be the preference. If I was trying to do anything else, clearly the shuttle is much more capable. For me, it was much more fun to fly the space shuttle because I was the pilot and then the commander, and it was so technically complicated that, you know, I think it's technically much more complicated than people generally could even imagine. The amount of effort it took to learn how to fly the space shuttle was pretty significant. Certainly, you know, having that perspective and that experience, I think, changes you, you know, on a, you know, emotional level, maybe. I think people that, you know, had the privilege of looking out at the Earth and seeing how fragile the atmosphere is and how part of it is, you know, polluted, but generally very beautiful, is, you know, changes you for better. I think it makes you want to, you know, do whatever you can to take care of this planet for our, you know, it's very important to our future. I think, yeah, and I think you also get a new sense of empathy where, you know, you realize that we have this incredible planet to live on, yet there's constant, you know, hardship and war and famine and conflict, you know, and we should do a better job working together to solve those problems.
I'm a student and I teach. I teach beauty at Art Center College for Design. Teach what is compelling, what is evocative. And so, yeah, there's all kinds of beauty. The window, of course, I can't get enough window time. The window time is outrageous. Just the geography is spectacular. It's not a geography book. It's the world's own geography. And you know, it's what you see. You can't get enough of that. It's the eddy currents, the spiral currents, the right kind of sunlight. You can see ocean currents. It's the aurora. It's the pink and the green shooting up and down. These waves that cover 1,000 miles. It's the sprites that maybe I was the first human being to record. Not to record, but to report. That we know you could observe a story, but we don't know what you're talking about. When enough airline pilots see the same vertical lightning, then they call them sprites. And so it's all that kind of stuff. It's out the window, and you can see galaxies with the naked eye. You can see the meteoroids coming in. You see 3 or 4 or 5 at a time, and that's the shooting stars, except they're between you and Earth. But I could go on forever, and in the window. So it's the heavens and it's the Earth that you're looking at. The beauty of zero-G, the freedom, the three-dimensional freedom. But it's a special case because you were not evolved to be there. Life evolved over 4 billion years here, and gravity played a major part in its evolution and a major part in your particular makeup. And you get there, body doesn't know how to deal with that. It wasn't designed to deal with that. So the other parts of the beauty is how seamlessly you can pull off the mission. Is it beauty? Yes, that's a beauty too. Believe me, it's a dance. And so a spacewalk, I'm an athlete. So this is something I brought to the spacewalking world, is that I'm an athlete. What? Yes, I go out the door and the dance of my suited body and my tools, that is an athletic event, no different. Figure skating, trained with Dorothy Hamill, people like that, the real champions. I am an athletic event, and whether I get the job done or not depends upon my athleticism and my movement with tools. It's that simple. So there is a beauty. There is a beauty of that ballet and that dance. A spacesuit isn't nice, but it has its own kind of beauty. And how seamlessly you work the relationship between you and mission control, it has a beauty in it too. The way that you work that relationship, the way you maintain that relationship, and the way you talk, and the way you the way the two of you know what page you're on without even talking about it, that has a beauty too. I got to spacewalking immediately. As soon as I joined NASA, I was even working Apollo, testing Apollo capsules in a vacuum. I got more vacuum time than any human in history due to all my tests, and I shouldn't brag about that. A vacuum is not necessarily a nice place. I got into that because a spacewalker got to do work. That's the only reason you're out there is to do work. Well, I know how to do work. Product, I'm a child labor. I drove everything on the farm. I was heavy construction equipment mechanic. I was an airplane mechanic with the Marines. I was a tank mechanic with the Marines. Trauma surgeon fixing broken people. So I know how to do work. Secondly, my physician stuff, I know the anthropometrics of the suit. I know the ergonomics of the body and the suit. You got your body, a suit not got your body. A suit is not got your body. It has its own body. And so to being a physician with anatomy, the physiology, and all the rest of that stuff, working the human factors and working the ergonomics, my physician, training education that helped there too. As a physiologist, which I am, graduate degrees in physiology, biophysics, when you put the helmet on, you're closed loop. When you put the helmet on, you breathe what the system is giving you. You're not breathing air. And your temperature is what that box you got on the back of you, that's what the box is doing for you. So you're closed loop. So your physiology is whatever the life support system on your back is giving you. And so that was another neat way I got into spacewalking. Most stars we look at have bunches of planets. And a whole bunch of stars we look at have planets conducive to biological life as we know it. And doggone it, life will arise. If you look at the power of life, the power of that carbon-to-carbon bond, the power of what life is, on our own little planet here, we already got 4 million species, and the scientists think they know we're not done yet, but are there going to be twice as many? So we've identified 4 million species. Well, they think there's another 3 million out there too. So that's the power of life. The power of life to arise and to propagate itself and to continue on. And so if any planet out there is just a little bit conducive to life, life is going to arise or be carried from somewhere else. Statistically, then, it's a total certainty that life is everywhere out there, by the billions and billions, by the trillions. And if it gets its act together on its own little planet, technology will have evolved over millions and billions of years, and so they're doing interstellar travel as